Deep in the remote southeastern corner of Siberia, there is a stretch of taiga so massive and dense it swallows entire river systems. It is flat, quiet, and hundreds of kilometers from the nearest town. But rising out of that endless green canopy is a mound of shattered gray rock. This model shows its footprint, 40 meters high and 160 meters across, in stark contrast to the flat ground. Slice through it and you see its exact geometry, a perfectly centered inner dome surrounded by a steep outer ring. It looks absolutely alien to the surrounding pine forest. The shape gives the distinct impression that something of immense size violently pushed its way upward through the earth and then stopped right before breaking the surface. Long before any mapping planes flew over this region, the local Evenki people already knew about the site. They called it the Fire Eagle's Nest, and they gave it a wide berth. Generations of hunters passed down warnings that wildlife refused to go near the rocks. People who ventured too close fell mysteriously sick, and livestock simply disappeared. Those stories remained entirely local until the summer of 1949, when a young Soviet geologist named Vadim Kolpakov was sent into the highlands on a standard geological mapping expedition. When guides finally led him to the crater, Kolpakov wrote that he questioned his own sanity. Staring at the massive, symmetrical cone of shattered rock, he genuinely wondered if the summer heat had caused him to hallucinate. But his notes and measurements confirmed it. The Fire Eagle's Nest was a massive physical reality, and the scientific community suddenly had to explain how a structure like this could exist in the middle of a dormant forest. The material composition of the crater presents the first major problem. It is built almost entirely out of millions of pieces of fractured limestone, yet there is zero history of mining activity or known geological processes in this region capable of producing it. Then there is the biological footprint. The rock pile itself is completely dead, but right at the crater's edge, the surrounding trees grow at an incredibly accelerated rate, dwarfing the rest of the forest. Researchers needed a timeline, so they sampled those massive trees, using dendrochronology, or tree ring analysis, to trace the forest's history backward to the moment the soil conditions changed. Charting growth ring data backwards from Kolpakov's discovery in 1949, the rings show the formation occurred between 400 and 600 years ago. This eliminates the famous 1908 Tunguska event. The data proves the crater predates that explosion by centuries. Taking a known historical cataclysm off the table means whatever shattered this rock and mutated these trees was an isolated, highly localized event. Early on, the leading hypothesis was straightforward: a meteorite impact. A high-velocity strike leaves behind a very specific chemical signature. You expect to find shocked minerals, a massive debris field, and fragments of the celestial object. None of those signatures exist here. After decades of searching, investigators have found zero trace of a meteorite at Patomskiy. So geologists pivoted to a second explanation: a small, dormant volcano that pushed its way to the surface. But that requires volcanic output. There is no lava, no ash, and absolutely no volcanic rock anywhere near the site. Furthermore, the deep geology of southeastern Siberia is quiet. It lacks the magma channels and tectonic friction needed to support a volcanic eruption in the first place. By ruling out space and ruling out magma, the science points to a strange conclusion. The structure is entirely terrestrial, made of the Earth itself, yet it completely lacks the chemical and physical evidence left behind by any standard geological process. Right now, the theory with the most scientific backing involves a deep, violent release of underground gas. This underground schematic shows how a massive buildup of hydrogen gas could vent upward into the bedrock. The sheer pressure and heat would theoretically be enough to fracture the limestone and heave it upward into that precise ring and dome shape. As that superheated gas escapes and saturates the topsoil, it could permanently alter the local soil chemistry, delivering the heat and nutrients required to trigger that massive, accelerated tree growth around the perimeter. The mechanics make sense, but the evidence is missing. Nobody has been able to identify the source of the gas, explain why it built up in this one specific spot, or find a single identical formation anywhere else on the planet, and studying it further remains immensely difficult. In 2005, the first heavily funded multi-scientist expedition finally made the trek in. The trip ended abruptly when the lead scientist suffered a sudden, fatal heart attack right next to the crater. It was a medical tragedy, almost certainly a coincidence. But for the locals, it perfectly validated centuries of warnings about the fire eagle's nest bringing sudden illness and doom to anyone who approaches. More than 70 years of advanced mapping, sampling, and physical modeling have given us a detailed picture of what the Patomskiy crater is not, but the Earth is clearly still capable of generating massive physical structures that completely break our established rules. To this day, the true origin of the rock pile in the taiga remains completely unresolved.